Happy Mother's Day, and I want you to tell you a story about something that happened with our kids. My wife and I, and Carol's right over there somewhere, we had 4 kids under 4 years old. We had 2 kids, then she contracted pregnancy a 3rd time, and twins. So we had 4 kids. And so we're living in Folsom. We have multiple kids in this house, and we wanted to come up with something that would just exhaust them. So when we put them in bed at night, we didn't need duct tape and Valium, and we'd put them in bed at night and they would stay there all night. Raise your hand if you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so what happened is we found it. We bought a Jump King trampoline, huge old trampoline. We put it in the backyard, and the very first day we put this thing in the backyard, we're all jumping on it. And then everybody goes in the house except for me and our son Scott. And Scott at that point is about, I don't know, I think he's 8 or 9 years old, but he weighed like 13 pounds, okay? And so he and I are jumping on this trampoline, and we figured out that if he timed his jump to my jump, he could go much, much higher. How many of you know what I'm talking about? It's that thing. And we figured out I could kind of trampoline him up in the air, and we got pretty good at this. And I mean, at one point, he's going really high, and there was this one moment. It was like this one perfect sort of moment where it's timed perfectly. And I don't know whether it was a synapse in the space-time continuum. I don't know whether it was barometric pressure. I don't know what something was going on there. I don't know if there was an infinity stone underneath the trampoline. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but we timed the sucker exactly right. And I went down, he went down, and he shot. He didn't just shoot up. He shot up like you'd fired off a rocket, okay? I fell down on the trampoline from the force of this thing. I'm looking up, and Scott is way up there. He's clawing the air with this terrified look on his face, and it's like somebody dropped a cat off a 15-story building, okay? He's clawing the air. He comes crashing down right next to me, and we are like relieved nobody's dead. We are laughing our heads off, laying on this trampoline, and then we hear this. And we look over, and that exact moment, Mom has walked into the backyard to see that. And she looks at us and says something about us doing this much, much safer, which we did until she went back in the house. And ladies and gentlemen, I learned a very important lesson that day, and the lesson I learned that day is this: nobody, and I mean nobody, gets as high as they can get in life without somebody else. Nobody gets as high as they can get in life without somebody else lifting them up. Does that make sense? Okay, it is a massive deal. And it's exactly what happens in Mark chapter 2. And so if you would reach into your programs and grab out this outline, it says, raising hope, let hope rise. And nobody gets this high in life. And it's almost like that story comes right out of Mark chapter 2, because when the dawn sets on Mark chapter 2, and you might want to title this, the most encouraging message you have never heard. I actually believe this. I believe it is possible. It is possible if you are willing to lift people up in a world that puts people. Are you fed up with people being put down? Yes. Oh, every internet troll. It is possible. It is possible. I believe if you will lift people up, it is possible to trigger a miracle in the life of somebody you care about. Like if you're going, oh man, my mom, my dad, my kids, my grandkids, my brother are setting our work, or I'd like to trigger a miracle. I believe, now, we don't do the miracle, but it is possible to trigger a miracle in somebody else. And that is exactly what happens in Mark chapter 2. Check it out, okay? It starts with these words: a few days later, Jesus entered Capernaum. The people heard that he had come home. They're either, by the way, they're at his house or at Peter's house, okay? And it says this: they gathered in such large numbers, kind of welcome to Bayside, look around, it looked like this. They gather in such large numbers, there was no room left, not even outside the door, and he preached the word to them. Now, some men came, bringing to him a paralyzed man carried by. Okay, look, y'all awake. Here we go. Okay, math majors, here we go. Carried by 4 of them. Why is that important? Because team ministry is always better than individual superstar pastor ministry. Having a team is better, okay? And so it's carried by 4 of them. And you know what I love it? These guys are like, we are going to get this guy. We're going to lift this guy up. Nobody gets this high in life without something. We're going to pick this guy up and we're going to get him in front of Jesus. This is going to be awesome. And their first shot at it, they fail. They carry him over to Jesus. And it says this, check it out, it's right in the back. They said, since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd, what do? You know, they're going, oh, bad news, man. We can't get him in. The front door's jammed, the windows are jammed. Boy, it ain't gonna work. What do? The best way of telling you what they did is by telling you, I wrote a book years ago called Making Sunday School Come Alive. And when I was researching for that book, I found a youth pastor in Florida. And this youth pastor, one of the most creative guys in the world, and this youth pastor decided to teach this exact passage to his junior high kids. Well, junior high kids have the attention span of a gnat, okay? And so what he decided, which is better than some adults, and so he decided, I got to teach this creatively. So he took his entire junior high class out to a wing of the church that was going to be under construction. And it was these old buildings, and they're sitting in this classroom, and these kids are sitting in chairs, almost like a school class, and they have those little tiles on the roof. And this youth pastor, boring, starts reading Mark chapter 2 to these kids. 4 men came, bringing Jesus, since they couldn't get him in and these kids are bored out of their minds. And he's just reading Mark chapter 2 in a monotone voice. And then he says, and then they couldn't get him to Jesus because of the crowd. And so they went up on the roof. And all of a sudden, these junior high kids hear footsteps on the roof right above them in this building. And the youth pastor ignores the whole thing, just keeps reading Mark chapter 2. And he says, and they dug a hole in the roof. And these junior high kids hear a chainsaw start. And these junior high kids and the youth pastor ignores the whole thing, just keeps reading Mark chapter 2. And the chainsaw comes right through the stars. And all of a sudden, these tiles start falling on the kids. And sawdust starts filling this room. And the youth pastor ignores the whole thing. He's reading Mark chapter 2. They even admit it's going on, okay? And finally, these kids are freaking out. So they start scattering. And they scatter to the walls of this building. And all these tiles that fall, debris falling down. And all of a sudden, this youth pastor is just reading Mark chapter 2. And they cut a hole. And they cut a rectangle in the roof of this church building. And this thing crashes down on the chairs where the kids were sitting. And these kids are plastered, sawdust everywhere. And this youth pastor just kidding Marie. And he says, and they lowered the paralyzed man in front of Jesus. And these carpenters up on the roof lower their buddy in front of the youth pastor on this stretcher. And just like this passage, the youth pastor says, my son, your sins are forgiven. And these guys start gunning. They're all yelling and screaming on the roof, gunning the chainsaw. And he says, now get up, take up your pallet and walk. And this guy who'd been lowered in front of this youth pastor just gets up and he runs around. He high fives all these shocked kids and runs out the door. That's great Bible teaching. By the way, that's also a pastor you're looking for a job. For some reason, he's not there anymore. By the way, that is exactly what happens in Mark chapter 2. And the last verse says, this amazed everyone. And it says this, and they all praised God, saying, we've never seen anything like this before. Let me ask you a question. Would you like to see God work in your life in ways you've never seen before? Would you like to see God work in the lives of people you care about in ways you've never seen before? Here's the deal, people. The way God worked then is the way God works now. The way God worked then is the way God works now. These guys took 5 steps and everything was different with this kid. They took 5 steps and lifted a guy. They took 5 steps and gave somebody the gift of a brand new future. And I believe this, it is possible, if you will take these 5 steps, to trigger a miracle in the life of somebody you care about. Now, we don't do the miracle. Who does the miracle? Okay, God does the miracle, okay? So I believe this, God's the one that has to do the miracle, but we get to be the people that if we will lift people up, trigger a miracle. So for those of you who are going, man, I would love to see God do something in my life, at my work, in my kids, in my grandkids, wherever it is, okay? If you will take the same 5 steps, I believe you can see the same God spring into action. Y'all ready for this? So on this outline, I'm gonna give you these 5 biblical principles, okay? One of the things, I did this 15 years ago when we were still at Granite Bay High School, okay? We had a lady in our church, still a good friend of ours. She now lives in Southern California. She wrote these 5 steps down. Her son had come home, announced he was an atheist, and walked away from God. She said, I am gonna take these steps until God shows up and turns, I wanna trigger a miracle. She put this in her closet, because she knew he'd never go in there. She read them every morning. Prayed through this every morning, and about 8 to 9 months later, her son came back, rededicated his life to Christ. That was years ago. He's building a Christian family in Southern California. God is alive, and he is still working in and through people, okay? Make sense? And so here we go. Number 1, the first one, the letter R, it spells the word raise. R is this, raise your expectations. Number 1 is this, raise your expectations. In other words, it says this, and there's a huge verse here. It says this, when Jesus saw their ability, when Jesus saw how amazing they were, when Jesus saw how smart and intelligent they were, then he decided to work. When Jesus saw how charismatic, when Jesus saw how popular they were, then it says when Jesus saw their faith. It was their faith that triggered a miracle, okay? And by the way, it was their, here's what this passage teaches. Y'all ready? You will never raise somebody up until your faith raises your expectations. In other words, you will never raise people up until your faith raises your expectations up. And there, unfortunately, very few people in life have enough faith so that it actually raises their expectations, and we start believing God can do what only God can do. By the way, you know what was very convicting? One of the best books, at least for me, I've ever read was the biography on Steve Jobs. Okay? Anybody here got an iPhone? Okay? I mean, Steve Jobs believed impossible things were possible. Like he comes in one day and he goes, we're gonna build a computer in a box. All the engineers told him you can't do that. Everybody told him, we're gonna build, they got it done. He goes, we're gonna build a phone and glass is gonna cover the whole front of that thing. Well, that's impossible. That glass doesn't even exist. Steve Jobs says, we're gonna do it anyway. He met with the head of Dow Corning Glass, and the head of Dow Corning Glass said, that product doesn't exist. And Steve Jobs said, well, make it. He said, it will take years. Steve Jobs said, no, I need it quick. And the guy finally said, there's a glass that was invented in the 1960s, but nobody ever made it because there was no use. Anybody know what that glass is called? Gorilla Glass. He said it was invented in the 60s, but there's no factory. It will take years to build a factory. Steve Jobs says, it's possible. I need all you can make in 6 months. The guy said, that's impossible. Steve Jobs said, it's not impossible. I'll pay you more. Steve Jobs had all the glass he would ever need in 6 months. And as I'm reading this book, I realize Steve Jobs, who was not a Christian, believes impossible things are possible, and we're Christians and supposed to believe that, and we don't. You will never raise people until your faith raises your expectations. Number 1 is this, raise your expectations. God might be more willing to work than I believe he can work. Does that make sense? Number 1 is raise your, I gotta tell you this was cool. Somebody gave me this. An elderly guy moved into a retirement community, and every day to get to know people, he started going to the recreation center, playing checkers. He built all these friendships there, playing checkers, chess, all this stuff in the recreation center. And one day, he's in the recreation center, and he gets this feeling like somebody's staring at me. You ever had that weird feeling? And he looks up, and sure enough, across the room, there's this woman, and she's just staring right at him. So their eyes meet, and it gets a little uncomfortable, so he looks back down, keeps playing, and then he just wonders, did she stop looking at me? So, because it's a little creepy. So he looks up again, she's just looking right at him. And he looks down again, and then a couple minutes later, he looks up a third time, she's still staring right at him. And in his words, he says, I'm going to stare that old broad down. I'm sick of her looking at me. So he looks up, and he just looks right at her. And she looks back at him, and they lock eyes, and she does not look away. And he does not look away. Finally, he can't take it anymore, so he looks down, and he gets up, and he goes, something must be going on. So he gets up, and he walks over, and he goes, I'm going to go over and tell her to stop staring at me. And that's he just goes, ma'am, I noticed you've been staring at me. And she kind of cuts in, and she says, she goes, I'm so sorry. You look just like my third husband. And his heart, he goes, how many times have you been married? And she looked at him and said, twice. Awesome. Don't try that here at Bayside. Some people have an uncanny knack for seeing what could be, not what is. Okay? Number one is? Okay, 9:45. You can do better. Number one is? Now, here's the problem is, I know a lot of people are going, I have a dream. I went out. I expected God to show up at work. I gave it a shot. Didn't work. It's exactly what happens here. Check this out. Then number two is this, anticipate obstacles. It says this, since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd. They start going after it. All of a sudden they're going, excuse us, bad news. The house is packed. And it says this, since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd, they quit. They got bitter. They got discouraged. No, since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd, what did they do? They just solved it, okay? Anticipate obstacles. I've been thinking about this. I wrote this recently. I might do a book on this. I started thinking, I need faith in 3 times in my life. So do you, okay? And the problem is this. I have a lot of faith in 2 of the 3, and I'm miserable during one of them. I have a lot of faith at the start. In other words, I have a lot of faith at the start. I also have a lot of faith at the end. Like a faith at the start, like when the baby's born and I dream about what this kid's gonna be, or you first get married. I have a lot of, every honeymoon couple's got a lot of faith in the future of their marriage. Or you're like, I'm starting a business, I have a lot of faith, it's gonna be amazing. A lot of faith. I also have a lot of faith at the end, okay? Like, when you see the finish line, when the teenage years are over, when God does bless. Having faith at the start and faith at the end is no problem. When I don't have any faith is right in the middle, okay? Like when it's taking longer than you thought, when you don't have the funds, when the medical report wasn't good, when she broke up with you, when he broke up with you, okay? When the little baby you are so excited about becomes a teenager and you're convinced this isn't your child and you're having a DNA test on Monday, okay? And the mistake we make is we get discouraged in the middle. And the problem is this, okay? You will run into problems. However, they have faith at the start. We're going to get this guy to Jesus. And all of a sudden, they get into the middle of it, and there's problems and all this stuff, and it looks like it's not solvable. And when that happens, I want to give you a fundamental life principle straight out of the Bible. The key to a better future is this. Y'all ready? The key to a better future is this, okay? Have a great response to bad news. That's it. The only people that have a better future are people that have a great response to bad news. And the problem with me is when I get bad news, I almost have a bad response. In other words, bad news, I quit. Bad news, I get bitter. Bad news, I give up on God. Bad news, I give up on life. Bad news, I walk away from God. Bad news, in other words, if you have a bad response to bad news, you will have a bad future, okay? I'll give you an example recently. The Golden State Warriors, and was that not awesome? The Golden State, yes, God is working. The Golden State Warriors, probably the best basketball player on the planet, plays for them. He gets hurt, can't play. Okay. Last year, when that happened, the Houston Rockets, they whined their way for 2 games and lost. Okay. This happens, and that team, you read all the stuff about what happened. That team bound together and said, "We still got this." In other words, why did they win that series? Not because they're more talented, because it's arguably the other way. They won that series because when they got bad news, they had a great response. And you have bad news, bad response, bad future. Bad news, great response, God will show up and give you a better future. Okay? And these guys decide, we are not going to let bad news make us bitter, give up on God, give up on this guy. We're not going to let it stop us from serving. We are going to figure this out. And they actually go up and cut a hole in the roof and drop it down. They just figure a different way to get it done. Number 1, raise your expectations. Number 2, anticipate obstacles. Okay? Number 3 is this, increase contact. Number 3 is increase contact. Some men came, bringing to him a paralytic carried by 4 of them. In other words, they make contact with this guy and they never let go. Why is this an important deal? I'm going to put this on the screen. There is no impact without contact. There is no impact without contact. Another way to put it is this: the closer you are to a person, the greater your potential for impact. Okay, I'll give you an example of this. When Carol and I had 4 kids, at the same time, Bayside exploded. Okay, and I went, this is not a good combination. I got to be a present dad, but we're at Granite Bay High. When we were at Granite Bay High, we were doing 5 services in 3 different locations every single weekend. And it was like, we're going to build a bigger church here. This is going to be awesome. We'll just only have a couple services. The minute we go here, it goes from 4,000 to 7,000 people. We actually went to 6 services the minute we got here, with 2 of them in the video cafe. Those of you in the video cafe, hi. Okay? And I went, oh, I'm getting busier at work, but I got these kids and I want to impact these kids. So we did different things, but for example, with my daughters, I basically went, we're just going to start doing daddy-daughter date nights all the time. And so I think they were in like 3rd grade or something, and the movie Ice Age came out. Anybody, teenagers, remember that movie when Ice Age came out? And so I went, it was a school night, but I didn't care, so I thought, I'm going to take them to this movie. So we get their homework done, and then I take my daughters to this movie, and on the way to the movie theater, we drove through, I think it was, Leslie, was it Taco Bell? We drove through Taco Bell and got food to sneak into the theater. Now, raise your hand if you've ever snuck food into a theater. Okay, good. Keep it up. That's good stewardship, okay? Tell them Pastor Kurt said so if you ever get caught. And so what happens is we sneak food in there, and now before you get on me for doing this, we still bought the popcorn, so I still spent like $90. I will never forget this. We're sitting in the back row of this theater, and we ate all the food, and the whole last of the movie, I got both my daughters here in my arms, their heads are here, and we're watching Ice Age, and I literally am going, there is nowhere on the planet I would rather be. Nowhere. I'd rather be in a movie theater with my daughters than speaking to any crowd size anywhere. And we kept that up. When they're in high school, I went, you're not too cool to keep dating your dad, let's go. Okay, went to college, I'd fly down, we'd do daddy-daughter weekends. And why is that a big deal? Because the closer you are to a person, the greater your potential for impact. That's a really big deal. And that's also true of a church. A lot of churches, they gather on their little campuses on weekend. They have a worship service, okay? They teach the Bible. All these are good things, but they don't connect with the community. They actually criticize churches that do, okay? And they hide out on the community, and the community does not feel welcome. We actually believe the closer you are to everybody in the community, the greater your potential to impact them for the love of Christ. That make sense? So, for example, 2 years ago, we decided we'd try an experiment at our Adventure campus. And so we set up a Christmas light show drive-through. And we did this. Matter of fact, here's some pictures, okay? That's me. There we go. That's what you drive through. Check this out. And here's another example. Isn't that cool? And folks, last year, almost 100,000 people. That is more people that have ever driven on any church campus than I am. We're in California. Almost 100,000 people went through. It became the number one Christmas destination in the entire region, and is that every year. Okay? And why do we do that? Do we have a meeting where we're sitting around going, you know what? We need to use up more electricity. Let's set up a light show. No. Why do we do that? We did that for one reason. The closer you are to a community, and we want these people to be welcome. We're actually, this is your Granite Bay campus here. We're doing something at our campus here, okay? And what are we doing? We are redoing the entire thing outside the building. So for example, here's the future. Check it out. That is gonna happen to the lobby. Okay? The lobby's gonna be blown out, and we're gonna actually weather protect the court. It'll be amazing, okay? Then, this is gonna happen. We are moving the full cafe in. It'll be open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So the entire community can come here and actually get a meal and sit in a really nice spot, okay? We are also adding this, okay? We are putting in a whole nother playground for kids right in that turnout on the other side out there, okay? And we're also adding this. We are putting in a thing so the whole courtyard, you will not get rained on once there. And then, because Andrew McCourt's here, we're adding this, 2 soccer fields, okay? And we are trying to get permission to do all of this stuff right now. Now, the soccer fields, we are getting calls from all the kids' leagues already saying, we don't have enough soccer fields for our leagues. Could we use those? And we are saying to them, no. No, I'm kidding. We are saying to those soccer leagues, you're exactly why we are building this thing. Because here's what's going to happen. Look at that picture. All these families, most people do not think a church wants them. Right. All these families are going to come here. They're all kids are going to be playing soccer. Well, the little kids are going to be bored. They don't want to watch soccer. They're going to go down and play on the playground. And then when it's cold, they want coffee or they want something to eat, they go to the cafe, and all of a sudden, our goal is to create the number one community connecting spot in the entire region right here on this campus, and we're calling the entire thing Downtown Bayside, okay? And our goal is to do it. Same thing here. One of the things I am concerned about kids and their development, a few years ago went, the closer you are to kids in the community, the greater your potential to lift them up and impact them. So we launched a thing called Breakaway. Now, I'm gonna show you, this is gonna go by really fast, like 30 seconds long. I wanna show you about a 30-second clip. This is 5 years old, so there's a lot more kids now, but watch the energy and watch the face of these kids. Check this out. Doesn't that make you want to become a kid again? Like, we had nothing like this when I was a kid. Of course, we had dinosaurs. By the way, why do we do that? Why do we do that? Are we like, we got nothing to do in the summer, let's do it? No, we do it for one reason. Every single kid in this community matters to God and ought to matter to us. And the closer you are to kids and teenagers in a community, the greater potential you have to lift them up. Does that make sense? That's why we do it, okay? And by the way, I want to make sure you all got this. So the R is raise your. Second one is anticipate obstacles, but don't let them discourage you and make you quit. Number 3 is increase contact. The closer you are to a person, the greater. The number 4 is this, and I'm going to put these last 2 together, but keep your notes out, okay? The next one is this, start serving. Start serving. I love this. Since they couldn't get him to Jesus because of the crowd, they just keep serving. Every time you look at these 4 guys, they are serving. They lift this guy up. They try to get him to Jesus. That doesn't work. They lift him up higher. That doesn't work. They cut a hole in the roof. They just kept serving until something great happened. Some of you going, well, I don't really want to serve because I want to conserve my energy. Somebody gave me this week. This is unbelievable. Anybody heard of the violinist Paganini? Okay, famous violinist, and when he actually willed his marvelous violin to the city of Genoa, and they were like, wow, get this guy's violin. Under one condition, it must never be played. And so they were like, we had this treasure, and it didn't want it played because they didn't want the instrument to deteriorate. Well, it turns out, this was a few hundred years ago, it turns out the wood on such an instrument, when it's used and handled, stays in good shape and only gets slight wear. But the kind of wood it is, when it isn't used, the wood decays. And that incredible violin today has become a worm-eaten, rotted-out relic. A sad example of what happens to an unplayed violin. God created you to be this amazing instrument that would serve and be used to do incredible things. And when that doesn't happen, you rot from the inside out while living in spectacular houses. That makes sense? It's a sad thing. Start serving because it changes lives and is good for you. And now, why did they serve? Why do all that kind of stuff? Because the last one, here it is, expect God to work. The E is this, expect God to actually show up and work. I love this. This amazed everyone, and they praised God saying, we've never seen anything like this. Why did it amaze them? Because they actually didn't expect God to do anything. Now, I'm going to put all 5 of those on the screen at the same time and then apply it. Okay, check this out. Y'all ready? Number 1 is raise your expect. Second is I want a better future. Anticipate. Third, what did they do? Third, they increase contact. They got their hands on this guy, never let go. Number 4 is you start. And why do I do all that? I expect God to show up and work. Now, don't put that away. Look up here for a second. My life changed a few years ago when I was in Chicago. And we were going to this massive church back there called Willow Creek. And I was a professor at the time, and I would sit in there week after week, and I was stunned. Every church I'd been in had like 100 people. This thing had 10, 12, nothing like that had ever existed in America. And I sat there, and one week, and I've never been saved. I am sitting in a service, and the biggest guy I've ever seen gets up to give his testimony. His name is Mike Singletary. He's the linebacker for the Chicago Bears, and the scariest looking thing I'd ever set my eyes on. And he gets up and changed the whole way I thought. He was a member of that church, a really neat, sincere Christian. He gets up and he says, my wife and I built our dream home. We moved into our dream home. We were there 1 week. We looked at each other and said, we got to sell this house. We're too far away from our church. And he said, we sold our dream home to get closer to this church. And then he used a phrase I have never heard anybody use about church before. He used a phrase, and he says, because we wanted to be part of the action. And I thought to myself, I have never been part of a church that was at least attempting something good enough for God, where lay people would orient their life and pray and pay and serve to make that vision happen. And I was sitting right there in a set of stands back at Willow Creek, and I went, I don't know if I'll ever be a pastor. Carol's sitting right now. I said, after this, so we didn't move. I said, I don't know if we ever do, but if we ever do this again, it would be awesome to be in a church that was at least attempting something significant enough that it was worth giving our lives to. Okay? And matter of fact, we should put up a huge sign. Every church in America should have a sign. Come, fail, but for God's sake, try something great. Be a great church motto. So a year ago, we gave it a shot. We thought we might fail, but let's give it a shot. And would you get out this tiny little report card, okay? Everybody get this thing out. If you were in Mexico, raise your hand. If you were in Mexico this year, you're on here. You're the front cover, so good luck finding yourself. And that's a shot of the 1,000 students and adults in Mexico. And what I want to do is we are going to spend the next 3 weeks covering this. But McCord, if you're around, come on up. Okay. This, if you go to the inside is 53 projects. This is a compassion first campaign. 95% of American churches spend almost all their money only on themselves. This campaign was designed to raise millions of dollars, and the whole first $3 million gets sent all around the world to make amazing things happen. And we'll close this service in a minute with a video clip that'll blow your mind about number one, okay? Second is this. Go to the next page. This is the future of downtown Bayside, right on your campus, right on this campus, okay? And the one I want to direct your attention to is this. If you go to the whole third section, it says the word accelerate. Would you raise your hand if you tend to drive really slow? You drive the speed limit most of the time. Would you raise your hand? Raise your hand. Okay, well, look around. There's like 6 of you, okay? And you're always in front of me. Raise your hand if you're like, no, I drive another way. Okay, welcome to this page. It is called Accelerate, okay? And I got to pick the word, okay? And look up here for a second. Don't read it, look up here, okay? This is the year all 10 of these things have to get funded, have to happen. Y'all ready? Number one is this. We need more parking. Raise your hand if you've ever had a hard time parking here. Good. We are trying, this is on here every year because we're trying to get permission, but we are getting permission to solve. Number two is this. Strengthen families by launching multiple marriage conferences, okay? Newlyweds. Number three, and pay careful attention to this, we want to strengthen and equip and encourage American parents by launching Raising G-Ready Kids. Look up here for a second. Let me tell you what's going on in our community. This hit national news a year ago. We had a school in our region, and this school transgendered a kindergarten kid in front of the whole class. Before that, they read 2 pro-transgendering books to the class. Traumatized these 5-year-old kids. The kids are crying at home. They're like, kids are going home freaking out, waking up, and I had parents tell me, my kids are freaking out, waking up at night going, am I going to turn into a boy while I sleep? I'm going to turn, all this stuff. Now, the problem is this, they did all this without ever giving the parents a heads up they were going to do this to their kids, okay? And so, when they were grilled about it, we said, well, we don't think we needed to give the parents a heads up. Now that the state of California, however you feel about this stuff, we tend to stay out of politics here, but the state of California is developing rules, and they are going to move almost all the instruction about human sexuality out of the sexuality curriculum, because when that happens, you can pull your kids out of school. They are moving it to health sciences so that you can't pull your kids out of school. What's happened is this, California schools have moved from education to indoctrination, okay? And they're not giving parents ability to say, no, I want that, but I don't want that. And so And just so you know where we are, lots of Christians are going to spend the next few years bashing the government and bashing schools. We're not. Matter of fact, if you are a teacher or an administrator in one of our public schools, thank you. You're doing a killer job. Keep it up. We have your back, okay? We are glad you're here. But they came to me and said, you got all the people, if you lead a protest, we can shut the school down, we can do all this kind of stuff. And I said, and I want you to hear this crystal clear, we are not in the school bashing business, we are in the parent strengthening business, okay? And so I am writing a book, I'm about halfway done, called Raising G-Rated Kids in an X-Rated World, and we are going to then write curriculum for teachers, for parents, for small group leaders, for pastors to teach, and give that away free all around the country, okay? Because too many parents are trying to prepare the road for the child instead of the child for the road. Okay, make sense? Okay, that's number 3. That's a massive deal. Number 4 is this. We want to challenge, disciple, and develop thousands of teenagers this summer, okay? If you're a teenager, we want you and we want to own you all summer long, okay? Number 5, we want to accelerate the launch of new churches here, there, and everywhere, including Auburn, Elk Grove. Matter of fact, check this out. Auburn did a test service in Auburn on Easter. Kurt killed it. Kurt, all these guys are up there. Kurt went up there, and some of our staff went up there, and what happened is this. We had a school that held 600 people, and we set up thinking, all right, we'll have 300 people, 250, 300. It's our first, just do a test service in Auburn and see if there's anybody up there that wants to join us. And the Easter morning, 1,000 people show up. Well, it only seats 600. So Kurt and John Harris, a bunch of people, heroically, they run outside. They said, hey, everybody, come here. We can't get you in. Here's Starbucks gift cards. Go get a cup of coffee on us. Come back in an hour. We're going to add a service for you. That's exactly. They all came back and did a second service on Easter impromptu just for these people. Okay? So we are launching in Auburn. There's other stuff like we had a church meet with us near I don't have time to tell you that. There are churches interested in becoming, it's just kind of an exciting season around here, but this is the year to accelerate that stuff. Newport Beach and Maui still need to get added. Number 6, okay? Strengthen thousands of Christian churches. Our Thrive Conference here blew sky high, and our goal, matter of fact, we have been invited to do Thrive, or a Thrive One Day, in Seattle, Los Angeles, the Bay Area, New York City, Reno, Wisconsin, and Dublin, Ireland. Okay? All that'll happen. However, most of that stuff we have to fund out of here. Number 7 is this. Strengthen Christians and churches in Cuba. We have a team of people going to Cuba next week. They are setting up a pastors conference in Cuba that we'll go and do, and that will be followed by a full-on Thrive conference in Cuba with the permission and invitation of the head of church development for the entire nation of Cuba. They have invited us to come there. Still can't believe it. Number 8 is this. Encourage under-resourced pastors by providing scholars. Who pastors pastors? Okay, think about it for a second. Okay, and that's what's now happening because of Thrive. However, most of those city pastors have no ability to get into this kind of stuff. 9 is this. Help scholarship every kid who wants to go to camp get to go to camp, and then take Serve Day, our Serve Day in September. We are going to do something we've never done. We are shutting down on Friday, shutting down on Saturday. We're going to unleash 20,000 people. Guess what? You're all it. And then we are unleashing everybody to serve our community, and then we're doing something we've never done. We are renting Golden One Arena, all 7 of our campuses, everybody except for Folsom Prison, we are going to Golden One Arena for one massive worship service, and we will raise money to rehab inner city schools. And I just got one question. Andrew or Kurt, whoever's coming out, come on. I got one question, okay? I just went through this thing. We're going to take this seriously for the next couple weeks. I just went through this, and here's my question to you. Does this get any of your blood boiling? Yes. Does this get you, if you're a teenager, does this get you going, yes, we've got to make this happen? If so, welcome to Bayside. If not, you might be that violin. And you don't want to get stuck in that setting. And we're going to close the service with a really cool video. Before that, there's something you got to know. This is pretty cool. Announce whatever you want.
Okay. Oh, wow. Sorry, I thought.
Welcome to the stage, Andrew.
Yeah, I thought Isabel's having a fifth. Wow.
A fifth of what? Never mind.
Okay.
That's not good.
Everybody, first of all, can you give it up for Pastor Ray? Wasn't that incredible? Absolutely incredible.
Keep going, keep going.
Yeah, okay. So just to remind you, next weekend, you're going to love this. We said it earlier on, that Kurt, Lincoln, and I are going to be here on stage. And some of the stuff that you heard about, we're going to give a little bit more detail. We got so much inspirational information. You're going to be going out of this place absolutely buzzing. And again, just to say, you guys are making all of this happen. It's because of what you did. The people around the world, locally and globally, their lives are being changed. So make sure and be here next weekend. It's going to be incredible.
That's right. And to wrap this up, I want to say two things. Number one is this message, I could go on for hours about each one of these points. Okay, each one of these points theologically has some depth to it that will run a lifetime. So I decided I would actually give you something permanent. In each one of your brochures, a gift from me to you, it's a bookmark or something you can put up somewhere with all 5 of these songs on it so you can pray this stuff through, memorize this stuff, get this passage down, read it, reread it, and in a sense, start living this kind of lift everybody up, watch God work life. Make sense? The other thing I want to say is this. So nobody told me they were going to do this. Behind my back, our staff went to Carol, because it's Mother's Day, and the motion thing, and said, would you shoot a video? And this is so cool. Carol, we were watching it yesterday. She started crying watching her own video. It was awesome, and I was choked up too. So especially moms, but everybody, this one's for you. We're going to close with this. Check this out.
Being a mom is the greatest thing in my life. Ray and I had been married almost 5 years when we had our first son. And then the second one came along pretty quickly after that, and we were just enjoying having 2 boys. But shortly after that, we found out we were having twin girls. And immediately we fell in love. And those girls have been probably the greatest joy in our lives. Being a mom is a real privilege. I know that. It's a gift. Children are a gift of the Lord. And as they've grown, as all of them have grown, it's been probably my greatest privilege to be able to raise those kids. Last year, I had the privilege to go with our global outreach team to Cambodia. And we were able to look firsthand at what AIM is doing with girls rescued out of sex trafficking. And I'm telling you, it was an incredible experience. Seeing those girls with so much joy in their lives and thinking about where they've come from is pretty staggering. And I thought, what if these were my girls? And what I can tell you, Bayside, is we are investing in something that is so incredibly comprehensive, from the rescue to restoration. They do it right. We were able to see their centers. We were able to see how there's some moms there with new little babies that they're helping take care of. They do a lot of prevention, but one of the biggest things, the biggest factor of prevention is this school that we've been able to participate in and to build. And as they say, their education is key, because once a girl can get a glimpse of what she can become, you know, the sky's the limit. Thank you for participating in the Motion campaign. It is changing lives around the world, but in particular, it's changing lives in Cambodia. I've seen it firsthand. It's amazing. It's incredible. You can rest assured that this is being put to great use. And if for some reason you're not on board yet, if you haven't participated yet in the Motion campaign, we welcome you to join us. We welcome you to get on board and participate, because great things are happening all around the world.
How cool is that, everybody? How cool is that? Stay with me just 1 second. It's really important to stay in your seats. Number one, if you're here and you're not yet a Christian and you're going, my goodness, all of this stuff is amazing. I want to tell you this. We do this because we have a relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ. Right. So at the end of this service, there's just a table over here. It's called the I raise my hand table. And I realize you didn't raise your hand in this service, but in your heart, your hand's going, yeah, I want Jesus. So the best thing that you could possibly do is walk over there at the end of this service and just talk to a Bayside friend about starting a fresh step in your faith. And then for all the mums out in the covered courtyard, we have 5 different photo booths for you to get your family picture. Mom, you all want that family picture, don't you? And it's with professional photographers. It's not Kurt with his iPhone, everybody. It's professional photographers. So just go out there and do that. That is a gift from us. We love you. We love moms. Come on, give it up for the moms one more time. And we look forward to seeing you next weekend. Can't wait for that. Thank you. God bless.
God bless. Have a good day.